You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. All right, folks, let's talk about that race in Georgia. The deadline to register is December 7th. December 7th in that particular race. The runoff will take place on January 5th. It will pit, of course, Pastor Raphael Warnock against incumbent Senator Kelly Loeffler. And then, of course, you have John Ossoff, who's challenging incumbent Republican David Perdue. Now, here's the deal. Early voting, December 14th. Now, already, y'all, they starting a mess. Go to my iPad, Anthony. Kelly Loeffler, she put out this tweet today. Reverend Warnock is a proud defender of Jeremiah Wright. He called police officers thugs and gangsters. He's anti-Israel, anti-Second Amendment, and sympathizes with Marxists. Too extreme for Georgia. First of all, you ought to hear this nonsense. Watch this, y'all.
Meet Raphael Warnock. He wants you to know he eats pizza with a fork and a knife. He once stepped on a crack in the sidewalk. But Georgians don't care about that. Georgians care that Raphael Warnock was a proud defender of anti-American, anti-Semitic pastor Jeremiah Wright, who suggested America deserved the 9/11 terrorist attacks.
Not God bless America, God damn America.
We celebrate Reverend Wright.
Warnock said law enforcement officers are gangsters and thugs and a danger to children. He's anti-Israel, anti-Second Amendment, sympathizes with Marxists and socialists, and wants to make your neighborhoods less safe. Don't let him fool you with pizza and puppies. Raphael Warnock is too extreme for Georgia.
Ooh, Robert. Ooh, Robert, the black guy is too extreme. He's too extreme for Georgia. This is the same Kelly Loeffler who trashed Black Lives Matter. Where her own, she owns co-owns the WNBA team. Her own players basically told her to go to hell. How do you think that's going to play with black voters and white voters in Georgia?
Well, I think that commercial, that was written directly from the 2008 anti-Obama playbook. I think it's literally word for word what a John McCain ad said back then with regards to Jeremiah Wright and Marxism and extremism. This is not going to work. Let's understand that if it was not a jungle primary on November the 5th, Pastor Warnock, who's my pastor at Ebenezer, would have won straight out. In Georgia, during the jungle primary, the names are listed in alphabetical order, Warnock being at the end. Even being at the end of a list of about 20 candidates, Warnock got the most votes of anybody in that jungle primary. So what we're going, in addition to that, another benefit coming on January 5th is that the Secretary of State today announced that the other statewide runoffs will also be on January the 5th instead of December the 1st. So that means my friend Daniel Blackman, who's running for Public Service Commissioner, will be on January the 5th now, as well as the runoff between Howard Franklin and Kwanzaa Hall for the remainder of John Lewis's term. So by moving those to January the 5th, that means we're going to have enormous turnout in Atlanta for both that congressional seat for John Lewis, which will have former City Councilman Kwanzaa Hall campaigning for, as well as Howard Franklin and the Public Service Commission race. Normally, in a runoff election, you get about 10% voter turnout compared to the general election. We're going to have several times that number because of the interest in this race, the amount of money that's going to be spent in this race, and there's a very good chance that Pastor Warnock will win his race versus Loeffler, who is a political neophyte, who has the issues with selling off stock at the beginning of coronavirus, who said that she is the most pro-Trump senator that there is in order to beat Doug Collins in that crazy primary that they're running against each other in, and also who's been disowned by the WNBA and who has ties to Wall Street because her husband owns the New York Stock Exchange. So Pastor Warnock has an outstanding chance where we have to push those turnout numbers on January the 5th. We have voter registration all the way up until December 7th. Early voting starts December 14th. You have the opportunity to request your absentee ballot right now in Georgia. You have to get your absentee ballot application. Then they send you the ballot. Then you can send the ballot in. It's a 3-part convoluted process. But with that in place, if you have the same early voting numbers that we got for the general election, then more than likely Pastor Warnock will win, and by extension, John Ossoff will have the opportunity to win also.
And that is that this is one of the things that Stacey Abrams put out here. She said if you're a college student registered to vote in Georgia, you can actually request your ballot at ballotrequest.sos.ga.gov. You can also, if you have any questions, call the Voter Protection Hotline at 888-730-5816. And so that's one of the things that she put out there as well. The thing that to me that's interesting to me, Scott, is again you're seeing Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, Senator Marco Rubio, they picked up on what Kelly Loeffler is putting out there. And I'm just sitting here saying, all right, I mean, y'all can try to use Reverend Wright, and you could, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out, Kelly Loeffler, you're trying to say that a pastor at Ebenezer is anti-Israel. He probably can give you a lesson on the Bible.
Exactly. And the the Quran and the other
the Torah
book, the Torah. Forgive me, but wait a minute, guy. You know, Roland, I'm a little disappointed in your intro on this because Karen Loeffler, the one who's been endorsed by QAnon, and the QAnon and their racists and their call for violence, that the Congresswoman, I believe from Alabama or Georgia, campaigned with Kelly Loeffler in order this race that is turned into a runoff. Is this the same Kelly Loeffler you're telling me about? On top of the WNBA and her team rejecting her? We ain't talked about that. So the gall of her to suggest that Jeremiah Wright, one of the greatest preachers of our time, or in history, if you will, regardless of whether you believe in what he preaches or doesn't, but QAnon? Oh, and by the way, there are a lot of white people on the front lines with Black Lives Matter demanding and protesting the police who act like thugs, if you will, and criminals. Let's just call them what it is. They may not all be that. But I also think that if you tolerate that on your police force, you are just as liable. That's another discussion. But let's not forget the QAnon, or whatever you call it, that is this mythical conspiracy of deep state and racism and calls for violence against people. That's who she not only has embraced, but they've endorsed her as well, and she's campaigned with their representative. Enough said as far as I'm concerned.
Rena, go ahead.
And this is the same Kelly Loeffler that in March of this year she and two other members of Congress and their advisors sold hundreds of thousands of dollars in stock after attending a closed-door briefing about the coronavirus. That's the same Kelly Loeffler. This woman.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
I mean, and okay, no surprise, the Justice Department in May of this year closed the investigation into all three of those senators for those stock trades they made, when the coronavirus was causing market turmoil. But these guys got the tip. So the fact that this woman is a U.S. senator just disgusts me. I mean, she's just ridiculous on every level. Number one, the imagery, I mean, I guess it resonates with some people, but she is so non-representative of the American woman. And so I'm not surprised that she got involved in insider trading like that, because she's probably like, what? This is just business as usual. So anyways, that's how I feel about Kelly Loeffler. But we should look at the facts here. And in Georgia, it's not great facts, but there's a silver lining. The Senate elections are usually likely to turn out more Republicans there, and that's based on past election data. Now, we know, though, the African-American voter turnout in the general election was historically high in Georgia this year. And I think that's what's going to motivate African-Americans again. We've got to be real about this. Georgia, whites in Georgia, more likely to be Republican. When they're affluent and white, they are more likely to be Republican and more likely to turn out for runoffs. We've got to combat that. I'm very proud of what happened in the general. I think Stacey Abrams deserves, medal upon medal, but the work is not finished. This has already felt like the endless election, and even though all of us agree and know that it's fact that Joe Biden has won, this was something I was a bit afraid of, is that the Trump campaign and his lawyers want to prolong this thing. So I don't know if Scott can offer any input here as an attorney, but my sense is that this whole hand recount thing, which is really an audit, it doesn't matter, it's just verbiage at this point. But I think Trump and his people think it could be to their benefit because it kind of puts off certifying electors. Could it lead us to a situation where Georgia legislature certifies electors in Trump's favor? Is that kind of the end game here? So I haven't had a chance really to investigate that today, and I apologize to the audience that I have not. But I don't know if Scott could shed any light on that.
Well, anything's possible with this Republican Party. Let me say this. The second prong to any audit or recount has to do with, is it going to change the outcome of the election? Even if you had electors from Georgia who would come and then create an issue for the U.S. Senate to determine who to certify, the Trump electors or the state legislature electors, Georgia state legislature electors, or the Biden, the winner Biden electors, if it doesn't make a difference or it doesn't change the outcome, that's the second prong of any test on these audits or these runoffs. So I still don't think so. They still have to put up or shut up. And so the Georgia race, going back to the Georgia race, let me just say this real quick. This higher turnout that we're going to have in this special election because of the money and what's at stake at the Senate, I think it helps Ossoff more than it helps, ironically, Warnock. Because Warnock and his race has all the celebrity and money and media attention, but also barely forced a runoff. And now with this heightened scrutiny on it, right, I think he's going to be the surprise, that he's going to beat Senator Perdue. We'll have to see. But, Roland, what do you think about that theory?
Well, I think really what you're dealing with here is that the only way there's going to be a heightened turnout is if the ground game is put into place. Typically, there's a dramatic drop-off when it comes to runoff races. So what has to happen is there has to be this really focus. Republicans have already announced that they're going to send Mike Pence to Georgia. Personally, I don't think Donald Trump's ego will allow him to sit in the White House. I think he is going to go to Georgia. I think, and you're already seeing this. I believe that Fair Fight, Stacey Abrams' group. I believe you're going to see Black Voters Matter. You're going to see Until Freedom. I know a number of groups who are already focused. I can tell folks, we are going to be focused there as well. I mean, I'm literally sitting here looking at a house that our team can rent for the entire month for 5 weeks. We plan on having multiple crews who are going to be in Georgia as well. We want to be in those places, such as Albany. We want to be in Savannah. We want to certainly be in Atlanta. Want to be in Fort Valley. Our plan is to go to those places where Black voters are, talk to them, and so that's one of the things that we're doing. So that's going to be intense focus, but this runoff is going to be, they could talk all day about money. They could talk all day about blanketing with TV ads and radio ads. This is all about ground game, Robert. And if you're the DCCC, you're the DSCC, you're the Democrats, it has to be about ground game, ground game, ground game. You have to look at the last election, you have to look at runoff and say, what do I anticipate there being a drop in terms of turnout, and then how can we get our people out? That's how they're going to have to win this race.
You're absolutely right, Roland. Back in 2010, I was the field director for Ken Hodges, who was the candidate for Attorney General in Georgia. And we had a 159 county strategy where we had either a church or a supporter in every single county in the state of Georgia. We hit the ground hard, while I think Roy Barnes was running for governor that year, hit the airwaves hard with commercials. We got more votes from the third spot, from the Attorney General's spot, than Roy Barnes got for governor, or that the person who was running for lieutenant governor got from the lieutenant governor's seat. Georgia is all about ground game and knowing where to go, when to go, and how to get there. Even in the deepest red Confederate flag, MAGA country part of Georgia, there are black families, black churches, Hispanic populations that can be reached out to and touched, and that many people forget to get out of there. You cannot just campaign in Atlanta and think you're going to win an election in Georgia. Once you cross 285, you're in a completely different state. And if you do not understand that territory and how to campaign there, then you're not going to be able to win. And one of the problems that Democrats often have in Georgia, in the South in general, they'll get a race like this that's close, where you have a runoff, where you have a chance to win. And instead of talking to Fred Hicks or talking to some of the political strategists who are from there, they'll bring in people from D.C. and New York and California to try to run a poll-tested and focus group certified campaign, and those always lose. You have to hit that ground running, and it's important to have a message that's going to turn out your base. Runoffs are about turning your base out, not about persuading new voters. Right. So instead of trying to find that one swing voter who voted in the 1984 election for Walter Mondale and see if you can bring him back to the Democratic Party, you need to be hitting these communities in Columbus and Albany, Augusta, Macon, Statesboro, Rome, Georgia, Carrollton, Athens, all around the state where you have minority populations that vote 90% for Democrat, and making sure you get them to the polls. Buses, churches sold to the poll, early voting matters. If we have those sorts of turnout numbers, that's how you win a race in the state of Georgia.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to boil down to, Rena. How do you see Republicans playing this race? Obviously, both sides know how critically important these two are. Republicans right now have a 49-48 advantage. They won the seat in Alaska. If they win these two seats, they'll be 51-48. If they win one, 51-49. Democrats need both to force a tie, with Vice President-elect Kamala Harris being the tiebreaker, which means they will control the chamber. And so how will Republicans try to go after these two seats?
Well, I think it's going to be everything in the kitchen sink sort of effort, because the reality is that Joe Biden is up 14,000 votes, right? And that's where we're at. That's truth. And that's in Georgia. So there's a lot of disgruntlement right now amongst GOP operatives down there of sort of like, how did we get here? But I also know how we got there. And I look at, okay, well, let me be clear here. I've looked at some exit polling. I don't really trust exit polling fully, and I think all of it needs to be taken with a grain of salt right now until we have complete totals everywhere. So I will say this: I think obviously GOP operatives are fretting. Ossoff is a sort of known quantity. Warnock is not, politically speaking. Ossoff having run before. But I think the wild card here, I think, is Warnock. And I've already started to see on the right the stories come up. And I was not aware, for example, that Reverend Warnock and his wife are divorced and they'd had a domestic dispute as he was preparing for his Senate run.
That was an alleged domestic dispute. It went nowhere.
Okay, so
yeah, she alleged that he drove over her. She alleged he drove over her foot.
That's right.
It went nowhere.
Oh, that's good to know. But I mention it only because I was not aware of it previously. I saw the Atlanta Journal-Constitution covered it way back in March or whenever it happened earlier this year. And then they got divorced, a few months later. I didn't even know he was married or single, whatever, but I'm seeing this headline popping up again. And I know that the GOP has a problem with white suburban women who are around my age in their mid-30s, particularly because we have young children. We've gone to liberal colleges mainly. We've come back and lived in the suburbs of Georgia. This is a reality, is that this disinformation campaign, or making Warnock seem out to be like an angry guy who runs over somebody's foot just because, it's coming out because they want to question sort of his fitness for office. And I think that's what they're trying to put in the minds of these younger white suburban women, is like, hey, you might be good with Joe Biden because he reminds you of your very sweet uncle who, is from a nice era and very statesmanlike. And look, I've been so impressed by Joe Biden and how he's been handling this Donald Trump concession stuff. But are you, what they're trying to sow doubt with, which is rich of them, is sort of, are you good with this black man who you don't know much and hasn't really been in the light that we all know much? He's been, part of Ebenezer, but do you really know him? Do you know he was involved in this? So that's what I see kind of happening right now. And I think operatives are going to get really, really nasty in the next few weeks. So we all have to be really alert as to what is truth and what's fiction.
Look.
Well, there's no purity test in all this, though, is it, Roland?
Go ahead.
I mean, there are no character purity tests. Each of these four candidates have their either political or personal flaws. So what? I mean, Donald Trump's not going to be on the ballot down there. Loeffler and Warnock are going to be on the ballot. If you want to compare characters, I'll take the minister's character over Karen or Loeffler's anytime if they want to get into that dirty kind of smacking match, if you will. I don't know whether that's going to be a big issue. I understand the GOP strategy, but Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have got to get down to Georgia. The whole personality piece, it may be relevant, but it's not going to be dispositive because the Senate and who controls the Senate is going to be on the ballot down there. And I think that's what's going to turn out or going to drive that turnout. This is a national race, even though it's in Georgia. And so we'll certainly have to see. Again, I say it's going to help Ossoff because of the national attention and the money going in there right now. But getting people to the polls, getting them to the polls on election day or before election day, if there's early voting, is going to be key. And whoever executes that the best are going to win these one or two races.
Look, I think that, it's going to be an enormous amount of money. When, Nancy Pelosi spoke out about, how the candidates run there in Georgia, I was like, you know what? Let the folks in Georgia figure it out. And to your point, Robert, that is exactly it. Frankly, white consultants coming out of D.C. can't come into Georgia to say, hey, this is how you win Georgia. That's not going to do it.
Hey,
the people in Georgia know best in terms of if you look at Warnock and Ossoff, because I'm quite sure they are going through that and they're looking at the numbers. They're looking at precincts. They're looking at who voted, who didn't. Somebody floated this story today that 95,000 people voted for Biden, didn't vote for anybody else. I'm sure people are like, okay, where are those votes? Because this is going to be a close race and margins are going to matter, which is why if black turnout intensity is at a high rate, that can very well offset what is happening other places.
You're absolutely right, Roland. I cannot implore the party enough. $500 million on both sides of the aisle is going to be spent in this race in the next 60 days or so. So it's crucially important to hire black consultants on the ground, hire local consultants in your local region. Don't simply think you're going to hire a kid from Emory or somebody from Gwinnett County and send them down to Brunswick, Georgia to do door-to-door campaigning. It's not going to work. Work with the local organizations. Put street money out there. The black church is alive and well as a motivator of people to vote in this state. Make sure that you have somebody who can connect you with those ministries and get out there on the ground. Do not sit up in Buckhead thinking you're campaigning to the state. Do not lose this race as we've seen happening before. And don't try to bring out-of-state issues to Georgia and think you're going to campaign on them. I've seen where they'll bring something which is popular in California and think that you're going to win a district attorney race in Telfair County with it. It simply put does not work. So the local touch is crucially important, and that ground game and that effort. Don't just run commercials on cable news and think you're going to win. You have to put money into black radio. I don't care if it's a podcast or talking on somebody's iPhone who has 100,000 Instagram followers. You have to get out there and touch people where they are and make sure that you are beating the bushes to turn out your vote. Don't do this whole song and dance where you try to convert the Reagan Democrats back to the party. This is not the time for that. 10% of people who vote in general elections usually vote in runoffs. You got to get that closer to 15 or 20% on the Democratic side if you hope to win.
And I think that one of the things they're also going to have to do is, and again, this is one of the hardest things I think for these campaigns to understand black people. What often happens is they'll say, well, we're going to focus our money just on the media outlets there in Georgia. We're a little bit different in that in that our people are communicating with our people in Georgia. We're communicating with HBCU students. And so when you support this show, when you support syndicated black radio, you're also hitting those particular places because we are reaching out to our folks there as well. And I think that's one of the things that these campaigns don't quite understand about African Americans in terms of the role that black media plays in terms of being able to drive information to places like that.
You're absolutely right. And so if you're not advertising on black radio or black television, black media, if you're not working with all the organizations, we have conference calls each week with Rainbow Push, Urban League, NAACP, Fair Fight, NSA's group, New Georgia Project, so many people who are organizing on the ground and who are working to get these people out and who have been working on these things for years. You don't have a Blue Georgia without Helen Butler. You don't have a Blue Georgia without Rita Samuel. You don't have a Blue Georgia without Janice Mathis. Those are the people who have been who've been fighting these fights long before people even knew there was a fight to jump into. And you have to support those organizations. Don't just go national, go granular, and make sure you're talking to people where they are. Those are the folks who are going to win this election.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, at Seek.com, I want to thank them for being a partner with Roland Martin Unfiltered. Mary Spiel, the founder of this black-owned virtual reality company. You can watch their content at Seek.com, CEEK.com. This is one of the headsets that you can use. This virtual reality headset. Drop your phone right into here. Look at that content, that VR content on their site. Other 360-degree video puts you right there up close. And so you just pop it on like this, and then you're able literally to just sit here and put yourself in the room and see everything that's around you 360 degrees. Now, if you're listening to music, folks, you can check out the music on their Seek.com headphones. These right here, folks, are 360-degree 4D headphones. The bass on these things are absolutely amazing. Surround sound, so literally when you're listening to it, the sound actually is around your whole head. Again, created by a sister. If you want to get the headset for the music or the VR headset, simply use this promo code RMVIP2020. RMVIP2020. Christmas is coming up. Some great gifts. In fact, my birthday in 9 days. So I'm just giving y'all a hint. So use a promo code RMVIP2020 and go to Seek.com. And again, we appreciate them being partners with us here at Roland Martin Unfiltered.